You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Welcome back to I Am Refocused Radio, man. Today, we have another show, but we have a returning guest. We have the one and only Terry Tucker. He is a leadership mindset and motivation expert. He's an author and international speaker as well. But don't stop there. He's also a former NCAA Division I basketball player, founder of Motivational Check LLC. He has served as a marketing executive, SWAT hostage negotiator, and a cancer warrior. If you still can't catch your breath after that, he is an author of multiple books, Sustainable Excellence, and also a new book that we're going to be discussing today, 4 Truths and a Lie, Ancient Wisdom for Living Your Modern Purpose. First and foremost, I want to catch my breath and say, Terry, thanks for coming back on the show, man. How you doing?
I'm great, Shemaya. Thanks for having me back on. I'm really looking forward to talking with you.
I know you have experienced tremendous growth. I skipped a lot of parts in your resume, but you have been on countless platforms, podcasts, radio, and TV. So when you think about your new project, 4 Truths and a Lie, kind of break down what was the inspiration behind that new project.
Yeah, well, so I kind of have to go back to my first book. When I wrote Sustainable Excellence, which I wrote and published in 2020, I always kind of felt that there was a second book. You know, it's Sustainable Excellence, 10 Principles to leading your uncommon and extraordinary life. And that's a book about success, how we can be successful. And I felt that there was always another book that was about another word that started with the letter S, and that was significance. Success is what we do for ourselves. Significance is what we do for other people. And so, there was the excitement around releasing that first book, and it's the first book I ever wrote, and it was great, it was fun, but there was always that tug of, there's a second book in there somewhere. And so in November of 2023, I started to write 4 Truths and a Lie. But it was intermingled with my cancer journey. I was going to the hospital for an entire week, every 3 weeks, to be treated for the cancer that I still have. And so there was kind of I call it a fits and starts. You'd start working on it, and then you'd have to stop for a week. And then maybe it was 10 days because you had to kind of recover, and then you'd get back to it and things like that. So, I think a lot of times in life, we think life is linear. We start at A and we just keep going until we get to Z. And what I found, certainly through my basketball journey, through my cancer journey, and through writing books, is that, we start at A and then we kind of plateau, and then we even work harder and we get worse, and then, we work even harder, and then we move in the right direction, but it's not linear. It's up, down, plateauing and things like that. So finally, after almost 2 years, September 11th, 4 Truths and a Lie came out, and I'm very proud of it, very excited about it, and I appreciate the opportunity to be on here with you today and talk about it.
You are telling the truth about it not being easy, because if it was easy, we know the saying, anybody would do it. So when you think about the commitment it takes to not just have a positive attitude and mindset, because in your case, you're still a cancer warrior, so you definitely have your true challenges outside of trying to publish a book and just maintain a quality life. What's some of the consistent things that you try to keep intact with yourself personally that allows you to be in a good position to carry through and have good productivity?
I think it's realizing, at least for me, that the journey through writing books, I mean, Shemaya, if you would have told me when I was in high school or college that I would ever write a book, I would have told you were nuts. There's absolutely no way that I would write a book, not alone write 2 of them. And so I think this is, and I've learned this through my cancer journey, this is something that's bigger than me. I have a very strong faith in God, and there's sort of an old joke that says when we talk to God, it's called prayer. When God talks to us, it's called schizophrenia. So God has never talked to me and said, hey, Terry, you need to write a book. But I think what God has done is put enough people in my path that have suggested, hey, Terry, you should write a book. Hey, Terry, you should write a book. And I really kind of put that off. And I think that kind of goes back to God's free will for us. You know, he doesn't make us do anything. He makes suggestions. He wants us to do things, but it's a matter of, do we want to do them? Do we want to do what he wants? Or do we just say, hey, you know what? I'm going to do what I want. And so, you know, this whole thing has been something bigger than me. And when I started writing Four Truths and a Lie, I never expected it to be as faith-based as it turned out to be. It was, you know, I talk about these four truths, and then the lie is kind of what we're sold sort of in our lives about what makes us important or successful or influential in life. And I never got to a point where it was this is all there is in life, you know. And so when I started putting all this together, it was, I'm just gonna put these stories in there. And then it was, well, this is a faith-based story and it's a really good one, so I'm gonna put that in. And then there was another faith-based story and I put that in. So it's not all faith-based, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, there are a lot of really good stories that are faith-based that kind of are interwoven with just regular things that happen to people that I know or that I worked with or that I know of, that I think illustrated the points I was trying to get across. So, like I said, it started one way in my mind and it ended up being published in an entirely different way based on what I wanted to write, based on, I think, what God wanted me to write, and based on the people that I had in my life that were making suggestions like, hey, you're cherry picking these numbers here. You know what? You need to be more well-rounded in this. And that's what I need. You know, I talk about my Magnificent Seven, which are 7 people that I give the book to, and their job is basically to pick it apart. What's wrong with it? How can it be better? Does this make sense? Does it not make sense? What do you suggest I do to make it better as a reader? And these are people from all different walks of life, you know, financial people to medical people to just my I don't say just my wife and daughter, but to my wife and daughter, who are people that know me and know how I think. And so it's a combination of putting all that together and saying, this is the best product that I can put out there and hopefully will make a difference in people's lives.
And that's true commitment, having not just thick skin, but understanding that what people can bring to your intention, it has a lot of weight and value, and be able to use that to fine tune the product. I mean, I already checked out. It's on Amazon and it already has 5 stars. It's pouring in right now. So we got to get our viewers involved and say, please go support this book and drop those 5 stars for Terry. When you are looking at how you touch on the lie, what is that lie that holds people back the most, and how do they overcome it?
Yeah, the lie is sort of the bill of goods that we're sold by society, by Madison Avenue. You know, if you drive this car, you're cool. If you wear these clothes, you know, you're hip. If you drink this soda or beer or wine or whatever, you know, you're part of the in crowd. And it's interesting. There's a great story about. There's a fable. I don't think this actually happened, but it's still a great story about Alexander the Great. And I put this in the book. Probably one of, if not the greatest conqueror of all time. I mean, in all honesty, we talk about how many people Hitler killed during World War II. Alexander the Great probably beat him in that regard when he conquered so much of the known world at the time. But the story goes that as Alexander the Great is dying, he calls his counselors together. And he says, I want you to carry out my final 3 wishes. And he said, my first wish is I want only my doctors to carry my coffin to the grave. My second wish is I want the road to the cemetery paved with gold and silver and precious stones. And my third wish is that I want my hands hanging outside the coffin for people to see. One of his counselors steps forward and says, I got to ask, you're Alexander the Great. You're the most powerful man in the world at the time. These seem like very trite wishes. You could have asked for anything. Why these? He said, well, number one, I want my doctors to carry my casket, my coffin to the grave, because I want people to understand that no doctor heals any disease. They help the body. They help you heal whatever is going on in your life. So I want people to understand it's important how they treat themselves mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. Do things that are good for you. We know, going back to what makes people successful and influential. When I was growing up, there were cigarette ads for the Marlboro Man all over the newspaper, the television, during sporting events. The Marlboro Man died of lung cancer. So we know that, cigarettes are not good for us. But Madison Avenue was telling us, smoke these cigarettes and you'll be cool. So that was the first wish of having my doctors carry my coffin to the grave, because no doctor heals anything. Be responsible for your own body, your own mind, your own soul. The second one was, he said, I've spent my entire life accumulating wealth, power, influence in the world, and yet none of that is accompanying me when I die. None of that is accompanying me beyond the grave. So I want people to understand that it's just sheer folly to chase those things in life. And then the last thing about keeping his hands outside his coffin, he said, I want people to understand that I came into this world empty-handed, and I leave it exactly the same way. And while I say that's a fable story, it's still a great reminder for all of us about what's really important. It's not about the money, the wealth, the power, and the influence that we accumulate when we're on this earth. It's about what we give to people. And Shemaiah, you've probably seen this. We know people that feel they're born empty, and that when they get out of school and they get into life, whatever that looks like for them, that their job is then to fill up their empty cell. They got to make the most money and live in the nicest home and drive the nicest car and have all the latest gadgets and gizmos. And what I've learned in my life is that we're not born empty. We're born full with everything we need to be successful already inside of us. We just need to find it, pull it out, and use it for our benefit. So our purpose or our goal in life should not be to fill ourselves up. Our purpose or goal in life should be to empty ourselves out with our unique gifts and talents, certainly for the betterment of ourselves, but also for the betterment of our family, of our friends, and of our communities.
I like the pouring out perspective, because service is the most rewarding part of life. And what I mean by that is, when you mentioned pouring out, it's like a movie theory in my mind, thinking about someone pouring some water, but how valuable is what is inside already? And if you spend your life trying to put stuff in and mix up with what's already valuable, you almost taint and contaminate what was already inside. And all you really had to do was take your time and energy and talents and just use it for something that's bigger than yourself. Firsthand what it's like to be trusted, to be playing in sports on a high profile level. Not everybody has those opportunities. Not everybody has the opportunities to write a book, but you've been able to experience those experiences. And whether there are good chapters or not so great chapters, the book itself has so much value in it. Touch on that for us, because there could be someone out there right now who they are thinking too much about what this world in comparison has compared to what they have. And maybe they just need to step back real quick and say, you know what? I do have something valuable. I just need to appreciate it more.
Yeah, it's a great comment you made. And actually, there's a story in the book about, and this true story. So I mentioned that I have cancer, and I'm treated at the infusion center at the University of Colorado hospitals. And for 4.5 years, I was on a clinical trial drug. And when I first started on that drug, there was a nurse that was taking care of me, a fairly experienced nurse, and she was training a very young nurse, about 25 years old, kind of just come into the nursing profession, already a nurse, but training her on how to do things on the unit. And that young nurse, about 6 months later, was taking care of me by herself. And during the treatment, she came in and she said, Terry, I've got a story I want to tell you, but I'm not sure how to tell it to you. And Shemaiah, I didn't know how to respond to that. What do you say when somebody says something like that, you know? And so I said, well, I hope you decide you want to tell it to me, because it sounds like I might enjoy it. So for the next couple hours, she's in and out doing what she needs to do for my care. And then finally comes in, sits down. She said, all right, here's the story. She said, when I first met you, I was going to get out of nursing. I had a very good friend of mine die. I was in a really dark place. I talked to my family. I was going to quit nursing and I was going to go to work for Amazon. And she said, and then I met you. And I see how you come back every single day, even though you have these terrible reactions to this medication. I shook very violently. I threw up. I had a headache, a fever, and all this. And she said, you keep coming back. No matter how bad it is, you keep coming back every day. And she said, then I went back in your chart when I was caring for you, and I read everything you've been through. You had your foot amputated, your leg amputated. You were on all this medication. And she said, when I finished reading your story, I knew I was where I was supposed to be. Now, Shemaiah, if she would have never told me that story, I would have had no idea that just my life, just the way I live my everyday life, had such a positive impact on this young lady. So anybody who's out there listening to us right now, if you think your story doesn't matter, if you think nobody cares about what's going on, I can promise you there are people out there, people you may not even know, that are watching how you handle the adversity in your life and would give almost everything they have just to walk 5 minutes in your shoes. So don't ever think your story doesn't matter. It absolutely does. And you need to share that story with as many people as you can.
And that's exactly what you're doing right now on the show. And I talked to you in the green room a little bit about how this platform has grown since having you on in the past. And I want to comment on the pouring out aspect again with what you said earlier. The process of pouring out, it's something you learn to appreciate over time, because in the moment it may not feel as happy-go-lucky and amazing. I mean, just what you said moments ago about what you had to go through with your treatments. Those moments are not the most smiley face moments in the world, but that experience is very rich of life lessons. And the fact that you inspired that young lady, that's what this show is about. That's what this show was always meant to be. It is to highlight individuals like yourself who have real life happening. It's not always positive, but despite that positive or lack of positive experience, you still find something inside to say, you know what, it's bigger than me, and I'm going to still keep going no matter what. I'm not going to just stop and quit, even if I have probably a good excuse to. But you know this too well. There's no excuse. When you know something's bigger than yourself, you pour even when there are days you feel empty. Touch on that, because sometimes people can feel like, but dang, man, I feel like I'm just empty, I'm drained. But could it possibly be because they are looking in the wrong places?
It might be. And I'll give you another story. This is another story from the book. True story, happened back in the 1950s at Johns Hopkins University here in the US. There was a professor there by the name of Richter, and he was doing experiments with rats. And as soon as I say rats, people are like, he's going to tell a rat story. Yeah, I'm going to tell a rat story. So hang with me here, folks. So he wanted to see how long the average rat could tread water before it sank and drowned. And so he put a group of rats in a tank of water that was over their head. And the first time, the first group that he put in basically treaded water and was gone in 15 minutes. He said, okay, he took note of that. Then he took a second group and he put it in the exact same tank of water that was over their head, and he watched the rats this time. And just as they were getting ready to sink and drown, he reached in, grabbed them, pulled them out, dried them off, and let them rest for a while. And then he took that exact same group of rats and put them back in that exact same tank of water. And the second time around, on average, those rats treaded water for 60 hours. Now think about that. First group of rats dies in 15 minutes. And I mean, and dies. It's not like, your business is going to go under, you're going to flunk a test, or your marriage is going to fail. You're going to die. And the second time around, 60 hours, which taught me two things. Number one, the importance of hope in our lives. That if we know we're doing the right thing, maybe not today, maybe not this month, maybe not even this year, but there's a good chance, nothing's 100%, there's a good chance that we'll get to where we want to be if we just stay the course, if we just don't quit and give up. And the second thing it taught me was just how much more our physical bodies can handle than we ever thought they could. Now, don't get me wrong, I think we all have a breaking point, but that breaking point is so much further down the road than we ever thought it would be. We quit, we give up, we give in because unfortunately our brains don't have our best interests in mind. Our brains are telling us, hey, Terry, this hurts, it's uncomfortable, stop it. And we listen to our brains, but we also know the only way you're going to grow, the only way you're going to get better, the only way you're going to improve is if you step outside those comfort zones and do things that make you uncomfortable. So on those days where, you know what, I just don't feel like doing it. I don't feel like going to, to the gym. I don't feel like going for treatment. I don't feel like going to work or taking my kids to school. Those are the days that you just got to do it because tomorrow will be better. Or maybe the next day will be better. It's kind of like we were talking before. Life isn't linear. It's the up, down, up, down, up, down that hopefully at the end will get you to where you want to be in life. So believe me, I have those days. I don't want people to think that, I would go to treatment and I would cry. I would feel sorry for myself. I would feel down. And I found a really quick and easy way to flip that around on yourself is when I'm doing that, what am I doing? I'm looking inward. Woe is me. Look how terrible things are. Feel sorry for Terry. I find a very simple way to get around that is to go find another human being to connect with, another human being to work. And I can do that at the hospital. I can sit in the waiting room waiting for my treatment and see kind of a newbie come in, sort of that deer in headlights look that they're scared. This is their first time there. What's going to happen? Kind of looking around. And I find just wheeling over in my wheelchair and saying, hi, I'm Terry. What's your name? Because now that person feels that they're seen as a human being and not as a cancer patient or not as a number that's going to be treated here at the hospital. And I tell them, these are the greatest nurses, the greatest medical assistants you are going to be taken care of. And it's almost like a weight is lifted off. And all I did was tell them the truth. All I did was tell them about my experience. So when you're in those dark times, go find somebody else to make a difference in their life too.
Once again, you've been listening to Refocused Radio and watching us online, talking to our guest today, Terry Tucker. And make sure you get a copy of his book, Four Truths and a Lie, Ancient Wisdom for Living Your Modern Purpose. I want to close this episode with purpose. And when you think about what purpose means to Terry's life, what are some of the hard truth lessons or lesson that you appreciate the most now that you're still here doing your thing?
That's a great question. I think we tend to talk about the word purpose in the singular, like it's one thing. And I can't speak for everybody, but I think for me, my life has been purposes. When I was younger, I really felt my purpose was to be an athlete, to play basketball. And then as I moved sort of into adulthood, I felt my purpose was to be in law enforcement. I was a police officer for a number of years. And now, in all honesty, I'm probably coming towards the end of my life. I think my purpose has switched again to put as much goodness, positivity, love, motivation back into the world as I possibly can. And let me tell you just one final story to kind of round this out. True story, there's a professor at the University of Chicago who does this experiment with his students. He's a psychology professor. And the idea is you go out and you get on the bus, and in 3 questions, you go deep with somebody. So you sit down next to somebody, hey, how you doing? I'm fine, how are you? And I'm just making this up. That's question 1. Question 2, what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm a doctor. Question 3, have you always wanted to be a doctor? Shemaya, it doesn't matter what they tell you. They could say, no, I grew up on a farm and I wanted to be a veterinarian, but X, Y, and Z happened. Or my mother was a doctor, but she died of breast cancer at 40, so I'm honoring her memory by becoming a doctor. Whatever they tell you, they're telling you their why, their mission, their purpose in life. Social media allows us to stay on the surface. We don't go deep with people. I've been asked, how do you want to be remembered? I don't want to be remembered. I'm not going to be remembered. 100 years from now, nobody's going to remember I was even here. But what I want today, what that purpose is, are those deep, meaningful connections with another human being.
Well, I appreciate not just you sharing that, but also you coming back on the show, man. It's great to have someone who's been on here before to come back again, like a family reunion type thing. But if you have a message while we have you, I want to squeeze one more question, man. If you have a message that you want to share for young people based on what you know about life, what message would you want to tell young people today?
I guess this. It's more important who you work with and who you work for than it is the work that you do. And I know people are going to think about that. That's kind of weird. Find people who care about you. Find people that are willing to invest in you. Find people that want to see you succeed. Hitch your wagon to those people and climb your mountains together.
Well, with that said, I want to say to our guest today, Terry Tucker, thank you again for your time today.
Shemaiah, thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed it.